Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in with us today. I'm so excited to be here with one of my dear friends to be able to share some great information out there in the world. We'll just kind of, in the beginning, we always like to take it a little bit slow to give people a chance to come onto the line. So as you're jumping on, please do let us know that you're here. And we'd love to see that you're here. Let us know that you can hear us, you can see us, give us a little heart or a thumbs up. Let us know where you're tuning in from as well. So many of you also will be watching this in the playback, and if you have questions or comments throughout this whole feed, whether you're live or watching later, do let us know, because we just want to be able to engage with all of you and share and help your furry friends. That's what this is all about. So let me introduce myself. My name's Amanda Ree. I'm the founder of Sama Dog, Wellbeing for dogs and their humans. We do these Facebook Lives every here and there, well, regularly on the weekends, but some extra ones here and there where we do some interviews with some of these amazing beings that are out in the world helping animals and sharing their heart and their dharma, their purpose with this world as they can in the most beautiful way that they can to help the furry friends. Lucy is a perfect example of that. This is Lucy Postins, and she is a fabulous being who started a company called The Honest Kitchen, which she will share more about with you of how that all started for her. And she's just been a beautiful being in my life. She's given me so much inspiration and encouragement and support. And the time that I stalked her and met her, I need to know her. and then we went and just made quick friends, because her heart is so beautiful, as you will see, and her service to this world has been remarkable and has certainly helped my furry children. So without further ado, I'd love to turn it over to her, let her share a little bit more about what she's up to. So thank you, Lucy.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you very much. It's exciting to have another avenue through which to share the things that I'm most passionate about. So it's really cool to be here.
And this is Parker, by the way.
This is Parker. She's desperate to go and play with the chickens, so she may be departing shortly. She's going to try and hang out for as long as possible.
There's all kinds of fabulous animals around this house.
But I am the founder of a local pet food company here in San Diego called The Honest Kitchen. I started the company back in 2002 in my own kitchen just a few miles from here in Pacific Beach in San Diego. And originally it wasn't going to be a big business like this. It was just a food I had created for my own dog, Mosey, who is a Rhodesian Ridgeback I owned many years ago. And he was suffering with some health issues. He kept on getting these chronic ear infections that would keep flaring up every couple of months and then subside, and I was spending a fortune at the vet on different prescribed antibiotics and steroids and ear flushes and things like that, and it would sort of suppress the symptoms but not really bring about a true cure. And so I was racking my brain. I worked actually for another pet food company at the time and really started to think about food potentially being the cause of his problems, and then wondering maybe food could be the medicine as well. So I started researching the raw food diet, which was really just sort of emerging in the US at that time. It was pretty popular actually in Australia and some other countries, but just emerging in the US as a sort of a mainstream aware product. And I started just doing my own homemade raw food meals for Mosey using just raw ingredients that I would buy at the health food store, and got amazing results. His ear infections really did clear up right away, but I made a huge mess in the kitchen in the process.
That's what happens, right?
Yeah,
and it's raw meat, so it's
bloody meat in the fridge and pureed vegetables all over the place. And just the storage space for the ingredients was just crazy in our fridge and freezer. So I started then thinking, well, how could I still feed a healthy whole food diet to my dog without all of this mess and inconvenience? And from there I came up with the idea for dehydration, which is just basically removing the moisture from the ingredients. And from there I said, well, maybe I could make a little business about this, because people at the dog park had shown an interest in it, and sort of we just had chats in the evenings after work when our dogs were running around wrestling, and I kind of shared with people what I was doing. And somebody from a local pet supply store was also really interested and said, if you ever get this off the ground, I would love to carry it at the store. And so that kind of gave me a little bit of impetus, and so I roped some friends into helping set up a website and our accounting system and PayPal, and gradually got the business going. And 16 years later, we're now at more than 50 employees actually, 50 human employees, and I think probably a similar number of dogs.
Yes.
About 15 or 16 dogs in the office every day.
Yeah,
So
every time I go in there's a whole herd of people and beings that come towards the room.
it's a pretty fun working environment, that's for sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I don't actually know this is the Honest Kitchen. So this is a dehydrated brand of food that you can find all over the place now. And so I see it like in places like Sprouts, and is it in Whole Foods?
In Whole Foods, yeah.
And then, like,
independent pets.
Independent pet stores, so like all your boutique suppliers. So basically any town you're in, there's going to be somewhere nearby you in the larger city there will be a natural pet food store that's usually independently owned. Maybe they even have a couple of them, but it's definitely not one of those big box stores. And they have it. They're like the experts at understanding these products. Also the holistic vet offices. I've seen them in every single one I've gone into.
Yes.
And is it in North America, all through North America?
Throughout North America, yeah. Throughout the US and Canada. We've actually got a little bit of distribution now in Mexico, and then a very small amount in Asia as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what a journey, and what an inspiring journey it is for someone like me, and surely some of the beings watching this as well. Like just having a dream, having a passion, seeing that it worked, and seeing that the world needed it.
Yes, yeah, for sure. It's been incredibly rewarding. I think one of the things that still stands out to me every day now is the amazing letters and emails and phone calls that we get from people who just really want to tell us that the food has made the most incredible difference to their pet's health. And some people that literally say, my dog had been given weeks to live and I was at my wit's end and I changed his food and now he's still here and it's 2 years later.
Wow.
And just incredible stories like that that really make all of the struggles worthwhile. So it's a lot of fun.
One of the best things, in addition to the phenomenal ingredients in this specific type of food, but there's a lot of things I love about it, but one of the leading aspects that is most helpful is that dogs really like it. Like the tastiness is there.
Yes.
You know, sometimes something very delicious for us too, right? It's like, this is so good for you. It's going to, be the best antioxidant you can possibly consume, and you eat it and it's just gross. And it's a little hard to get that in the daily. So dogs, definitely no difference. And so when I don't know that I've had one client that I've referred the food to, which is, I've referred it to thousands of people at this point. I don't think I've had one client that says, my dog just didn't want to eat it. Some dogs aren't used to it, and that is one thing. If you just put down a bowl of it, of a dehydrated, it's like oatmeal when you reconstitute it, and some dogs are like, what is this? If they've been eating kibble, they have to kind of get used to it. You have to bridge them in, but once you do that, they love the taste.
Yeah, they do. They're just as you say, there are some dogs who are a little bit apprehensive. They're not quite sure. It's a little bit of a different consistency, and the aroma is completely different than what they're used to. But no, 99% of dogs absolutely love our food. Cats are a different story. We won't discuss them today.
Yeah, cats are a whole different thing. Maybe one day some a cat, but a bit judgy. That's hilarious.
But, we're working on a whole new line of feline diets for next year. But dogs really do. They do love our food.
Oh, that's great. So for those of you, I see some of you just jumping on with us. Let us know that you're here, where you're watching from. Let us know that you can hear us okay too. That's always important to know that we have an audience we're connecting to. And if you're willing, if you love this conversation, if you love dogs, if you want to get the goodness of how to care for them and help them live longer, happier lives, please just push your share button at the bottom of the screen, because it'll help us so much to get the word out and give people right in their homes the ability to gain their education, further their education around what their dog ultimately needs. So that is a good question, and so many of the clients that I speak with too, we really take it from the top. Some of my clients certainly have a lot more knowledge than I do in dog nutrition, and some much less, and I'm somewhere in between that. And so let's just start from the top, really, in a nutshell. But what is a dog? We're so used to just kind of the kibble, the tradition of food, so to speak, over so many years. Now there's new varieties, new styles, new flavors, new recipes. So what is it ultimately, though, that our dogs really need? What's the most important?
There's sort of a handful of sort of pet food rules that we really try to follow and that we prioritize. I think for the most part, we really do see meat as the number one ingredient. That is sort of a key fundamental thing that the vast majority of animals really do need. And it's to make sure that that meat is from a pure, clean source, that it's humanely raised, responsibly sourced. If it's fished, we always like to use wild-caught fish, free range, all of those things. The energy that comes from the meat actually becomes infused and imbued into the food, and that's what your animal is going to be absorbing when they consume that meat. So we place a huge priority on that. We always try to use the cleanest possible whole food ingredients that we can. So organic ingredients whenever possible. Certainly any grains that we use would always be certified organic. Non-GMO produce. So we have a really strict list of requirements that we have every single one of our suppliers adhere to when we're purchasing ingredients from them. They have to sign a contract basically promising that the ingredient is not sourced from China, that it's not genetically modified, that it's not treated with chemical preservatives or artificial flavorings of any kind. We want to know about the way it's grown and processed, quality control testing for pathogens and things like that. There's a whole department at the Honest Kitchen that's devoted to making sure that all of our inbound ingredients are up to scratch.
Wow. And it's human grade?
Exactly.
That's a whole conversation, but not every dog food is human grade. Are there any other dog foods that are human grade?
There are a couple of smaller companies that are making human grade products. The regulatory landscape is really constantly changing. It's a very dynamic situation. So years ago when I first started the Honest Kitchen, to me being human grade was really sort of a line in the sand, and it was something that I wanted to make sure my product would stick to so that I could differentiate it from conventional pet food. So I sourced 100% of my ingredients from human food suppliers and found a human food production facility here in California to make it. All of that wasn't without its challenges. It was pretty difficult, even just finding someone to blend the food. That as soon as they heard that it was going to be that dogs were the consumers, they're like, oh no, we don't do pet food. And I would say, well, it's actually not pet food, it's food for pets.
You obviously you kind of don't even want to tell them, right?
Yeah, there was some
obviously you have to.
Yeah, some fairly heated conversations trying to convince people to make the product for me in the first place.
Wow.
And I sort of designed all the labels and things with the help of a friend and got everything going. And the first hurdle I ran into from a regulatory standpoint was actually in the state of New Mexico. So we brought on a distributor there, and so I registered the labels with the state, with the Department of Agriculture, and they sent me a letter and said, you're going to have to change these labels before we'll give you a pet food license in New Mexico because it says human grade. And so I wrote back and said, well, it actually is human grade, so can you give me my license, please? And they said, no.
Really?
No pet food is human grade. If it says it's pet food, it's for pets. And the only way we would ever even consider doing that would be if you got a statement of no objection from the federal FDA.
Oh, wow. Oh, and that sounds easy to get.
Yeah, so I said, okay, what's their phone number? Little did I know I was signing up for a whole year of back and forth with the FDA Center of Veterinary Medicine.
Wow.
Documenting our entire supply chain, having literally every square inch of our labels reviewed and scrutinized. Showing them the manufacturing facility and all of the quality control measures and everything. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they did provide me with a statement of no objection, which I then sent to New Mexico and got my license from them.
Good.
But
so
FDA,
a lot of regulation, a lot of obstacles you've jumped over.
A huge amount. It's been a major challenge, but in some ways it's a challenge I'm glad to have because it's something I always know that we can live up to. Any standards that are set by the government, we know that we're on the right side of it, but it's just going through that bureaucratic paperwork and all that is pretty exhausting sometimes.
It's sad too, isn't it, that we have this sort of culturally perceived difference in our pets' food versus our own food, where I speak to people who grew up maybe in different countries or kind of were back in the day kinds of people, and they'll oftentimes share that they used to just feed their dogs from their leftovers of their fresh foods that they were eating, fresh foods and meats and veggies and grains and everything, and they would just kind of feed the dog a little bit left over there, and that helped the dog to thrive. And that was a wonderful way to feed our dogs. And then, what was it, 100 years ago or so, that kibble started being made, so it was to be convenient for humans, which it certainly can be seen that way. It can sit in a garage, in a warm garage, in a plastic tub for a long time and still be fed. But that made us, or kind of brought about, a disconnect in what actually was healthy for our dogs and what actually brought them what they needed on every level of their being. And from that point, when you look at the charts of when kibble came into the picture, and you look at the charts of when canine cancer became on the huge rise, they're parallel.
They are.
And it's obvious that it ties back to that. And now I think it's said that about 2 out of 3 dogs succumb to cancer. So that's why we're surely so passionate about this.
Yes, yeah, and it's not just the way that kibble itself is made, but it's the raw ingredients that are going in. You know, pet food, the whole industry really sort of grew up around being a receptacle for the human food industry to place all of its waste. That was sort of the original impetus for how were all these scraps from brewing and baking and butchering and things going to get used up and not end up in the landfill. So basically, dogs and cats were seen as receptacles and an alternative to a landfill and a way to use up all of these things, which from an environmental standpoint, you can sort of see it's better than complete waste. But when you really examine what these ingredients are like and how they're very often spoiled, they're past their best by date, it might be leftover waste from supermarkets or restaurants and things that end up in that pet food supply chain, then you have to sort of load them up with chemical preservatives and artificial flavor enhancers and things like that just to make them palatable, combined with exceedingly high heat and high pressure processing that changes the amino acid structure of some of the proteins and things like that, making them almost unrecognizable to the animal's body. All of that stuff combined then depletes the immune system, and that's where you get all of these different health problems that start cropping up.
Because it does maintain some level of life, like they can sort of live off of it, like we could live off of Cheerios.
Exactly.
We could, but are we going to thrive? No. And is it going to be long-term health? No.
Yeah,
and that's the difference.
Unfortunately, the way that the regulatory system is set up in this country is, as long as a product sort of meets these basic standards of providing certain levels of certain nutrients, I think there's about 22 of them, you can basically take your product to market. And never mind the fact that, as one example, your source of iron might be ferrous oxide, which is actually rust. As long as there's iron that's in a measurable amount in that product, if it's in the form of rust, no matter. And forget the fact that a dog can't absorb that or assimilate or utilize it. So there's some really sort of scary stuff that happens in the industry, and so being human grade is a way to differentiate a product and just to kind of get back to basics and get back to a common sense approach. It's amazing how many people still today sort of almost are excited at the fact that their dog has never eaten people food.
So yes, I hear it all the time.
It's really depressing.
I hear it all the
People food
time.
is amazing for dogs. As long as it's formulated correctly and it meets all of their nutritional needs, then it's a great way to feed a dog.
Yes, and another thing that's great about the Honest Kitchen, not only is it so nutrient packed, but it also is very easy. It's very convenient. So as I mentioned a little bit ago, comes as like almost like your dried oatmeal would come, and you add warm water. I always tell people to use their kettle and use purified water, not just your tap water, and then you reconstitute. You let it sit for a little bit. It reabsorbs that hydration, and then the dogs get to enjoy it. And so just a little bit of warmth in there, I feel like it also helps with the smell, makes it a little more palatable. I mean, it's funny, when we were on a cleanse last week, my niece lives with us now, and she was making the dog food, and we got really hungry at points in our cleanse, and she was like, I gotta say, this looks delicious.
It actually tastes pretty good. We taste everything as part of our quality control. So there's literally nothing in there that isn't from the human food supply chain. So our cranberries and banana and papaya and things are literally the same that you would consume in a trail mix for yourself. So it's pretty tasty. I think it needs a little bit of salt and hot sauce by human food standards.
Salt and hot sauce. I remember asking Dr. Katie Kangas, who actually is, I'm going to do a Facebook Live with her on Saturday, so I'll share with all of you when to catch that. She's one of our local favorite holistic vets. And when I asked her about the Honest Kitchen, this was way back when I first met her, she said, you know, the one thing that I always tell people, most importantly with the Honest Kitchen, is that most of us should eat it and we'd be healthier.
Yeah.
It's so true.
It's amazing how many pets end up sustaining themselves on basically the equivalent of fast food. And a lot of people do end up using our food and then say, my dog actually now eats better than I do. So it's, but many of the same principles that we use when we're enlightened about food, to consume a whole food diet that's made from fresh, colourful, vibrant ingredients, all of the pigments that give vegetables, fruits and vegetables their gorgeous colours are actually phytonutrients or antioxidants. They have a tremendous effect on the immune system, the way cells communicate with each other, your eye and heart health. And so using the same principles that we feed ourselves with colourful whole foods that's minimally processed, those do translate directly into feeding our pets, and they do thrive just the same way.
Yeah, they're still the body and a mind and a spirit, just like we are. Oh, thank you, Proctor. I won out over the chickens. That says a lot. But the body, mind, and spirit is exactly what they are, just as we are, and we cannot separate that, even if we sometimes want to. Of course, they are very complex, multidimensional beings, as we say in the meditation teachings, and the more we can feed their body, that of course influences their behavior. I love it. I was just down with a friend, Zoe Sandor, who I don't know if you're familiar with. She opened a new canine prep school down in PB. It's brand new. So it's a school that dogs will go to during the day. I'll definitely bring her into one of the Facebook Lives because that's a great conversation. But she was explaining to us the other day at the opening how she will not train a dog until she speaks with the human companion about what the dog eats and they get it on the right diet. And she's very open to what's right, but move it in that direction of more health, and then she'll start to train the animal, because she says animals who have that poor of health and nourishment cannot think straight. They can't be expected to behave properly.
No, it's very true. I think when you sort of think about how an animal would consume foods in the wild, and you know what they need to function on a daily basis in terms of having that meat and all of the produce and everything, that's how they would flourish in a wild setting. That's not to say that we're going to go and chase down a pheasant every time they need to eat, but at the same time using those basic principles, it's no wonder animals become sort of depleted of energy and don't function on a normal level when they eat terrible food.
And I always tell people too, yes, it's going to be a little bit more expensive to buy a better food, clearly. You know, you can go to Walmart and get food for like 50 cents a pound or something, but where you're going to end up spending your money is then going to be at the veterinary office and on medicines. And we all know that veterinary support is not inexpensive, and that could be lifelong medicines that they are put on. Before I switched foods and learned all of the ways in which I could care for my animals better, there were probably 3 or 4 different medicines that Maya specifically was supposed to be on for life, and she's not on any of those. She just loves her Honest Kitchen every day,
amazing.
And that's her healthcare routine.
No, it's certainly an investment, but it's the best investment in terms of what you put into your body is what's going to happen to you in the longer term. The way an animal's skin appears on the outside is a reflection of what's going on the inside. That's one of the quickest ways that you can kind of see some sort of upset, but very often a depleted immune system isn't evident until sort of years down the road, and that's when people end up paying an astronomical vet bill for something that's been sort of festering over the years that hasn't been recognized or treated. And so investing in that good quality food is one of the best chances, and combined with minimal vaccine protocols and healthy lifestyle in terms of not using excessive chemicals in your home and yard, and all of those things are pillars of total health, but food absolutely is one of the most fundamental ones.
So good. I see we have a few questions or comments that have come in. Let us know that you guys are here. I'll do a quick little reintroduction since some of you are just joining in with us. My name's Amanda Reed, the founder of Salma Dog, here with Lucy Postins, who is the founder of the Honest Kitchen, a fabulous food that is based here in San Diego. She started it, as she shared in her story, right here in our hometown. And so we are talking about good food and how much it can help. Sorry, Parker, I'm going to take you with me to come up here to get a little closer so I can read, because, I can't read that far. So Dee, thank you for joining us. Switched my pups to the Honest Kitchen grain-free a year ago. They love it so much. Is there any way to lower the carb count? Add more fresh meat? Would that still be complete and balanced nutrition? Good question, Dee.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, there's certainly a spectrum of carbohydrate content in our foods in terms of the different recipes. So some of the foods do naturally have slightly more fiber and carbohydrate than others. Some are more heavily dominant in meat. So our grain-free fish and grain-free turkey, as well as the grain-free beef, I believe, are some of the highest protein levels, and by virtue of that fact, they are naturally on the lower end of the carbohydrate spectrum. With that being said, if you want to sort of meddle with the ratios a little bit further, you absolutely can add extra meat, either raw or cooked meat, or raw meaty bones if you want to. All of our foods have a balanced calcium-phosphorus ratio, so you can certainly add in those extra things if you'd like. Something like our proper toppers would also be a really good choice. Those are actually about 90% meat.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So yeah,
That's
so
good.
you can supplement the food with those, and maybe feed a little bit less of the dehydrated. So the combination of those two things will give you a higher protein content and a slightly lower carbs.
There you go.
Yeah.
And if any of you also have questions, please ask them. We are here with the master of dog food. So if you've had some burning questions, you've tried the Honest Kitchen, we'd also love to hear from you. If that's a food that I or others have recommended for you, let's hear about it. So Sherry has a question. Is there a formula you suggest for dogs with GI issues?
For sure, yes. Gastrointestinal issues can have a variety of different causes, but very often we see with dogs that are suffering with chronic digestive upset, sort of chronic either gassiness or diarrhea or intermittent vomiting that really is occurring on a continuing basis over a long period of time. Very often that is related directly to a food sensitivity. So the biggest thing to do is really identify which ingredients your dog can and cannot tolerate. And obviously don't feed the ones that seem to be triggering off that GI upset. You can get food sensitivity or food allergy testing done by a veterinarian. There are multiple different ways that can be done through a blood test, or actually there are some saliva tests nowadays as well.
Like Glacier Peak? I'm sorry to interrupt
yes.
you, but that's one that I think you can even get from some pet stores. Can't you just go
yes.
straight in? I know Dexter's Deli has it, and I'm pretty sure that Pupology has it as well.
Yes.
You can just buy it direct and do it at home.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of great retailers have many different sorts of testing kits that perform exactly that role that you can do at home. For more severe cases, it might be better to go to a holistic veterinarian that they can really sort of help drill into things. Another approach that you can use in identifying food sensitivities would be to do a elimination diet, which is basically you start off by just feeding, say, 2 super simple ingredients. So as an example, you could do turkey and sweet potato. With the theory being that your dog is not allergic to either turkey or sweet potatoes. So you want to feed that for a couple of weeks, and hopefully you'll start to see some subsidence of the issues, so sort of an elimination of diarrhea or gassiness or vomiting, whatever it is that the issue. And then over a period of time you can start to add in 1 or 2 ingredients new each week, and then anytime you see a flare-up, so let's say for example you decided to add barley in week 3 and all of a sudden there was a flare-up, that's a really good sign that your dog might have a barley allergy. You can also just start off by doing a grain-free diet, because very often grains are an issue for dogs. Not in all cases. Many dogs actually need some soluble whole grain in order to maintain a healthy body weight and body condition, but some dogs don't. Every dog is an individual, so it's really a matter of trying to identify which things your dog can and can't eat. By going with a limited ingredient diet, that's also a great approach if you don't have the time or inclination to do that elimination diet. A limited ingredient foods. At the Honest Kitchen we have a line of lids or limited ingredient diets that are made with just 6 whole food ingredients. And so very often when you switch to one of those, it's very simple, usually made with unique ingredients like navy beans and fish and coconut and things like that.
That are very soothing and
very
easy.
soothing and calming, yes.
And still balanced nutrition, because that would be
Exactly.
my concern with sometimes doing just a few things, is that certain balance of what they need.
Yes.
For a little while, they're okay to figure it out allergy-wise, but for longer term, you need to make sure that
that's-
foundation's there, as you well know, and
Yeah.
that's why those limited ingredient
Right.
diets are great, because you guys have already made
Yeah.
sure the balance is there.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, you definitely don't want to do that elimination diet for a prolonged period of time. It's there as a tool and to serve a purpose, and then the idea is then you just select an actual food that will work. And then our Perfect Form is a really good supplement as well. It's almost got a cult following at this point. It's a super popular supplement with slippery elm really is sort of the star ingredient in that food. It's extremely soothing and emollient to the whole digestive tract. We have some customers that literally get into a panic if they don't have some Perfect Form on hand.
Perfect Form, it's called. It's one in the canister, right?
Yes, it's a herbal supplement. So slippery elm, papaya leaf, pectin, plantain, pumpkin seed. I don't know why almost all the ingredients start with a P, but
because it makes
they
your
do.
poop work well. They had to tie it in there. You know?
That's it. That was the answer. But that's a really good supplement and one of those that gives you pretty quick results.
And again, all of these products can not only be found on The Honest Kitchen, is it with the
Honest Kitchen.
thehonestkitchen.com, or at your local natural pet food stores, and even some of your local natural human food stores, although we want to make sure, or we want to move towards moving that distinction out. But of course, your grocers or where you would buy your pet foods will both have them. And Lucy, something that you said, I do see we have another question that came in, but something that you said that I have always really enjoyed about The Honest Kitchen also is that every dog is a unique individual. And that's why I love that you have enough different variety of blends, but not too many that makes it completely overwhelming, but enough to really select what's right for your dog at this specific time in their life, or whatever condition they might be facing, or what their dosha is, as you know, and as many of you guys know with Ayurveda, we look at beings by their mind-body constitution, and every single one of us has a slightly different recipe. So we can choose the recipe of their food to match the constitution of their being, and that is what can bring you back to balance.
Yes, exactly. That's a really good point. We very strongly believe that every animal is an individual, and there are no sort of blanket rules. There is no one single food that's perfect for every single animal that's on this planet. So feeding them according to their own specific nutritional needs and requirements and their life stage is super important. I think we're a company that's kind of bucked the trend a little bit. There are a lot of pet food manufacturers who will sort of create senior diets, and even conventional veterinarians who will say, oh, well, your dog just turned 7, so now you need to put him on a senior diet because he's officially a senior. Well, there are actually some cases where you might have a senior dog who's suffering with something like, let's say, cancer, where the therapeutic nutritional approach would be to do high protein, low carbohydrate food. They actually might end up on a puppy formula. Even though they're a senior dog.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really a matter of looking at what your individual animal needs. We have an amazing customer service team that's there to kind of help guide you.
They are amazing.
They can be
so well educated.
Yes, yeah. So they're sort of a valued partner in terms of if your veterinarian makes recommendations, then the customer service team can kind of help choose foods based on what your vet's saying your dog needs.
And one thing to know that I think is important to put out there in the world is that, and having come from human medical world with Dr. Chopra and many conversations with physicians, learning that physicians, even now to this day, for the most part, only have 1 semester of nutrition training through medical school. Well, it goes the same for veterinarians.
It does.
Your conventional veterinarian that is going along the conventional path is only receiving about 1 semester of nutrition training in all of their education. And that training in the veterinarian world is provided by Science Diet Hills, which is, of course, one of the big names in the dog food world, but is not necessarily by any means the most healthy. And it's not that vets are not wanting your animals to be healthy. I think that they're good vets, and I know many of them out there, they want that. They simply just don't know. And that's where companies like yours come in handy, because they bridge that gap. Okay, the vets don't know, that's okay. They know how to help my dog with lots of other things. So how can I gain this knowledge? And that's why we are doing this Facebook Live.
Yes, yeah, and I think fortunately, holistic and integrative veterinary medicine are really continuing to escalate. I mean, years ago they were only sort of an emerging thing, and it was pretty unheard of that you would take your dog to a chiropractor and people would just gasp if you said you were taking them for acupuncture. But now those things are really becoming a lot more mainstream. There are holistic and integrative veterinarians in most major cities in this country now. And very often vets who are trained in holistic and integrative approaches do have a much more advanced appreciation for nutrition as a pillar of total health and well-being. And so they're much more educated on what to look for when it comes to diet, and they will help to sort of coach you on feeding less processed foods, incorporating fresh, real whole food into the diet.
Really good. Let's see what some of our audience members have to say. Hi, Marilee. Great to have you here. Adi has another question. I use the proper toppers as treats. Great idea about adding the food to lower the carb count. The fish chews are great. They love them. Oh my gosh, those fish chews are insane.
They are a little bit crazy.
The dogs are crazy about them. I got some the other day. We had the chance, Lucy invited us to go down and provide some education experience, or not education, meditation education and an experience to her staff. And we got some of the fish treats. And what are they called?
Beams.
Beams.
Yes.
And we brought them home to our pack, and boy, oh boy, I could hardly keep
crazy.
Everyone organized anymore.
You see, Taro actually just got up at the mention of them. He thought he was getting one right now.
So that's a hit. The fish chews are great. They love them. Thanks for great products and for answering my questions. Wonderful to have you with us, Dee. Thank you so much. Who else is watching? Renee is watching. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Have any of you tried or maybe feed the food of the Honest Kitchen to your pets now? And how's it going? We'd love to hear from you.
I think one of the most common questions that we get asked when people see the format of our food, as you mentioned earlier, it's in this sort of dry, granular or powdery format when it comes in the box, and you hydrate it with warm water so it makes a nice soft kind of stew consistency or an oatmeal. A lot of people have this misconception that that's going to cause dental problems. They have this belief that kibble or crunchy food is going to somehow clean the teeth.
Yes.
And that's a really common question that we get. And the fact is, kibble does not clean the teeth. You should never rely on a hard food to do the job of a dentist or a bone or a toothbrush. The fact is, the majority of dogs actually don't even chew their kibble in the first place. If you've ever had the misfortune of seeing a dog regurgitate his food, which very often happens on your best rug, you'll see those
white
pellets,
ones especially.
Yes. You'll see those pellets actually come back up the same way they went in. They didn't get chewed at all. So there's no way that they're going to break down tartar or scrape the teeth. And even if they did, they're just really not abrasive enough. So don't rely on food to clean the teeth. I think similarly, you don't necessarily want to rely on food as being a source of other therapeutic type ingredients like glucosamine and chondroitin. There are some brands that sort of brag that the food is a natural source of those types of things for bone and joint health. But actually there are regulations that prevent pet food companies from putting what can be considered to be a therapeutic dose of glucosamine and chondroitin into a diet. It's not to say that feeding food with those things in naturally occurring or added is going to cause problems, but if you do have a dog with bone and joint issues, it's best to invest in a food it's best to invest in a supplement that is a exclusive source of those ingredients of glucosamine and chondroitin to really get that therapeutic benefits.
Good to know. Good to know. And that kind of leads me to our last topic, important, something that we could certainly talk about for a long time, but using food as medicine, as you mentioned earlier, where we can and where we can't, or at least we can provide the base and then supplements.
Yes.
And certainly anytime a dog is having a specific circumstance, a condition, there may be some supplements or even specific foods that you can bring in that will help. In the Ayurvedic world of body, mind, constitution, as I mentioned, if you got the airy dogs, that food that and ingredients that are very grounding and calming and kind of heavier and warm and oily is very good for them. And so the food can be a medicine for those dogs because it really helps their whole being come back into alignment again and into balance. Where a fiery dog, you would do cooling foods, pacifying, some of like what you mentioned with the more simplified foods and the coconuts and things like that really just think of what we even put on our skin when we have irritation.
Yes.
And then lastly, you have your earthy dogs that are very already kind of heavy and slow, and their digestion is kind of bogged down. So you want to create more lightness, a little more veggies, bitters, a little bit of spice, not necessarily like Tabasco spice, but spice as in cardamom and fennel and cinnamon and other spices, to turmeric, exactly, to stoke the digestion. So that's what how we use food. That's one way that we can use food as medicine. And what do you think?
For sure, yeah. And I think when we're formulating diets and recommending diets for different situations, certainly Ayurveda is sort of common sense when you think about foods and the effects that they have on the body. We also pay quite a bit of attention to traditional Chinese medicine approaches, which is obviously a sort of a derivative of Ayurveda. So one good example that I use quite a lot is if you think of a dog that's got hot spots, itchy skin, very dry, constantly hot and panting. They're the type of dog that's cool seeking, so they might be sprawled out on your cool floor. You wouldn't see them kind of curled up in a ball on the sofa. They'll be sprawled out trying to cool down. They might have a red tongue, they might have a red rash on their belly, and literally hot spots, which is almost, I think of it as sort of heat literally bursting out of
like
the
little
skin.
volcanoes.
Yeah, so in that type of a situation, what you want to feed is a very cooling, damp draining diet. So you want to feed cooling meats, things like fish and duck, turkey to a certain extent, things like barley, soothing ingredients that are going to help to cool down that naturally occurring heat. And then conversely, a yin dog, which is the opposite of that yang constitution, they are sort of thin and pale and a little bit sort of pathetic looking, and they are the ones who are sort of constantly curled up in a little ball trying to keep warm. They're the ones who need to have that warming diet, things like chicken and lamb and other ingredients, pumpkin and sweet potatoes that help to get everything flowing again. So Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, I think, are
hand
very
in hand.
closely related on those types of things. And then other things that people often take their dog to the vet for, ear infections we talked about before, skin issues and digestive upset are common ones, but then when you get down to sort of another level of other sort of medical conditions, things like kidney issues, food can be a major therapeutic component in addressing kidney issues for dogs. So years ago it used to be the case that vets would recommend a very restricted protein diet. That no longer is thought to be the best approach. Now actually holistic vets would recommend moderate protein levels with lower levels of sodium and phosphorus, but you want to still feed some protein. The main thing is to make sure that it's high quality and easy to assimilate for the body. You want those kidneys to kind of have the best chance at being able to absorb as much nutrition as they can.
Yeah, that's a very common misunderstanding within Dr. Google or whatever people refer to it as, is people will look into it and be very confused by that outcome.
Yeah, and similarly for liver issues, obviously the liver is the major organ in the body that is responsible for dealing with toxins. And so very often when people have a dog who's been diagnosed with liver issues, they end up on one of these sort of prescription diets that's actually loaded with yet more toxins. It's got byproducts and chemical preservatives and other things. Poor quality grains are a major issue for dogs who are prone to liver issues. When you feed low quality grain, that can be particularly prone to toxins like aflatoxin and vomitoxin, which basically grow in moldy grain or grain that's been improperly stored. So those are major toxins that can have a terrible effect on the liver. So another reason to, if you do feed grain, always make sure it's organic, high quality, human grade ideally, because then you've really got to make sure that it's been properly stored and handled, so that the minimal risk of those toxins developing.
A good question came in, and I spend a lot of time talking about this with my clients too. Is dehydrated food still alive?
To a certain extent, yeah. We sort of think about pet food as a spectrum. So on one end, you've got literally completely raw or fresh food that's literally just been picked out of the ground or freshly slaughtered, if you want to think of it that way. Nothing's happened to it at all. That's sort of on a very extreme level. Next up, you've got sort of fresh food that's been refrigerated or frozen. Something's been done to that. It's been stored, and as soon as something's picked, nutrients start to gradually become depleted from it. At the very far end of the spectrum, you've got extremely heavily processed foods like kibble and canned food diets that have gone through severe heat and high pressure processing that have killed the vast majority of nutrients. And then in between, you have sort of lightly cooked or freeze-dried or dehydrated foods that have had a little more done to them than just being frozen, but nowhere near as much as being put through an extruder or a canning machine. So some of the enzymes do survive the dehydration process. Some do not. Similar to freeze-drying, when you go through any type of kill step that's going to destroy harmful pathogens, there is going to be inevitably some effect on the enzymes and other things that you would think of to cause a food to be alive. So it's not as alive as a completely fresh diet, but certainly nowhere near as dead as a heavily processed one. It sort of occupies that sweet spot between the two.
And then adding on, like we talked about, you add on some meats, you add on some veggies, which is what we do in our family and with our pack, and then you can rotate that also depending on the season, and just kind of getting some variety in there, which we know is very good for the gut flora, having that variety.
Absolutely. We're huge advocates of dietary variety, and I think many people have sort of referred to the independent pet food industry as being kind of like craft brewers in the beer industry, that we're a band of small independent family-owned companies that all sort of philosophically think the same way. We've all got slightly differentiated products and slightly different approaches from one another, but we do all see ourselves as part of a total solution. So a lot of people will they may feed regular food for the majority of the time, and then they'll rotate in things like the Honest Kitchen and small batch and other great local small company products and offerings, and mix them up. And variety really is the spice of life. It's a cliche, but it's so true. And being able to put those different types of ingredients and different processed foods into your pet's bowl, adding in something like a fresh raw egg or a tablespoon of yogurt or a little bit of ground beef. If I'm cooking a side of salmon, I'll buy an extra big one, and my dogs literally know if there's a salmon going in the oven, they know they're getting some with their dinner.
It's great.
And so anything like that that's going to incorporate extra nutrition is a huge benefit.
And it makes dogs so much happier. Can you imagine eating kibble every day of your life? Like, that just sounds so boring and sad. So your dogs, their big part of their life is around taste and around food, as we all know. And when you can add so much more joy to that experience, I think even as a human companion, I love watching them eat. There's something like very deep in me, some of you can maybe relate, that there's something that I just get such a gratitude or gratifying experience, inside of me when I watch them eat. So really
that moment of mealtime is amazing to be a part of. I'm just stirring up the food, and I often joke I end up with wet socks just because Taro salivates so much while I'm stirring it. He literally drools all over my feet. But not just the mealtime itself, but you can actually witness the benefits of a minimally processed diet over the longer term as well. So many people will write to us and say that just their dog's energy levels are higher, the coat quality is better, they're gleaming, their eyes are shining brighter, and just so much of their outward appearance and energy is enhanced by feeding healthier food. So trying to sort of stretch to do less processed and better quality is always a good investment.
Well, that's a beautiful place to end, I think, because I hope that all of you not only have learned some great valuable information around what is best for your dog and a little bit more about dog food, since this is an experience of twice a day in most of our lives, but also have found that inspiration that we certainly share about putting this out into the world even further, helping our own dogs, but helping educate our friends that weren't listening or maybe aren't even involved in this conversation, perhaps aren't interested in this conversation, but they do have dogs, and you can help them to broaden their perspective, to open their mind a little bit more, and for their dogs to live a happier, healthier life.
Yes, absolutely. People aren't always ready right away, but just starting to sow those seeds and just sort of having the conversation. Very often, unfortunately, it takes a time for a pet to actually be ill before people suddenly turn to nutrition to help turn things around. But if you can start to sow those seeds, sometimes when people then get a new dog down the road, they'll start them off on the right path, and the benefits will be witnessed.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very
We
much.
love you so much. We're so proud of you and what you've created in this world, and we are your biggest fans. So we'll keep on cheering for you as long as we can cheer. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. And as you watch this, as I said in the beginning, put your questions down below. We'd love to answer them, and we will be back with you in a few days with another Facebook Live and more information to help you make a happier, healthier life with your whole family. Bye. Namaste.
Bye. Thank you.